All right, let's get going on strand 4 now. So we're moving into regulatory systems. This is all of your nervous system, your special senses, and your endocrine system or your hormones. So we're going to get started with the nervous system. Standard one is just talking about the basic functions. This is going to be done in two parts. So the first thing you have to understand, your basic functions of your nervous system, but I want to first go over the more conceptual side of your nervous system. So your nervous system is just this constant response and stimulus loop that occurs your entire life. And the idea is that you receive some type of sensory input, and you can only receive sensory input for things that you have sense organs for. So you can sense chemicals in your smell, chemicals in your taste. You can feel pressure waves in your ears. You can bring in visual information through your eyes. And all of that's great. You have pressure receptors and pain receptors and hot receptors and cold receptors, all kinds of stimulus that you can receive. But that is what your perception of reality is based off of, is what stimuluses you can receive, which means that there's this whole nother universe or world of different senses that you can't sense. There's all kinds of stimuli going on that you don't receive, right? And that may sound weird, but just think of the idea. Like, we can't hear dog whistles because we can't hear that high of a frequency. We also have a hard time hearing all of whale songs because we can't hear in that low of frequency. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. Just you have to realize that there's a whole reality that we can't sense. We don't see an ultraviolet light. We don't see an infrared light. It's not a bad, wrong, or bad thing. Just realize that your perception of reality is solely based on what you yourself have a sensory input for. So let's say you lost your sense of hearing. Well, your perception of reality is not going to be significantly different because you don't get that part of that sensory information doesn't come into your body, and so you can't use any of that information to change the way you feel about a situation or the way you perceive something, because all of your sensory input has to be processed in a specific way. Now, there are a bunch of different areas of your brain to do processing. You don't have to memorize all of those or anything. I just want you to understand that when information comes in, you have a visual area, sound area, motion area, movement, memory area, thought area. They're all in there. And while they process that information, the next step of processing is not just understanding that that's a shark. It's understanding that that's a shark coming at me and it's dangerous. So you have to be able to not just process the image itself, but also attach meaning, move it into memories, and put this all together by using your brain. And so, however much sensory input you get, the better you're capable of processing that. And different amounts or different types of information can be input. Maybe you're hypersensitive to high pitched noises, so you're going to perceive those differently. So the same sound you might see as scary versus somebody else finds it calming, and then you're going to respond differently. And so your response is basically what you do. This is what you can sense. This is how you integrate those senses together, and then your response is what you do about it. So if you are outside and it's hot, you're going to process that information, and your normal response would be to sweat, right? And remember that you can do that while you're awake, but your body is still doing this while you're asleep as well. So the real big thing to remember also is that your nervous system is never going to stop doing this loop. You're always going to be sensing stimulus, processing that information, and generating response. Whether you're doing it consciously or subconsciously, it's still occurring. Okay, so just expect on the pass off to have a couple examples of that and say, hey, is this a response? Is this a stimulus? Or is this a part of the processing? So just be able to categorize those, know all three of them, and what they mean as far as how one affects the other. Okay, so get those memorized, get this pass off done, and you'll come back here for part 2.